Grief at the holidays is such a difficult thing. It is a scary thing. There's so much that goes on in the holidays, and so much is so different in our lives when we grieve that the confluence of those, the slamming together of those things can kind of take us offline. We can feel kind of abused or out of sorts completely with that. So I'm really glad that each and every one of you are here at this seminar for thriving with grief during the holidays. Ask the questions that you've got and put them in the chat box. State what you are most concerned about with these upcoming holidays. And we'll get to those. We'll talk about those, help to alleviate some of your stress, some of your anxiety, which can just build and build and build until we make it through the day that we're most worried about. I'm joined here by my good friend, Chris Cano. Chris is the program director for New Hope Grief Support Community in Long Beach. And Chris, it is just outstanding to have you. Thank you.
Oh, super honored to be here. Such an important topic at such a difficult time of the year. So just looking forward to having a conversation and processing with you, and hopefully get some good information out about how people can take care of themselves and each other during the holidays.
Yeah, I think that's great, taking care of themselves and each other. We oftentimes forget one another. But what is it that makes people so anxious and uncomfortable as the holidays approach? What is there something that you've heard from folks in the work that you've done and the people that you've supported?
Yeah, I think one of it is just, I think, the inherent expectation that this is supposed to be a merry, joyful, and jolly time, right?
Yeah.
So all of the songs that we sing, the greetings that we give to each other, they're all devoid of grief acknowledgement. The fact that this is a difficult season for people, that this year it won't be so merry, and it won't be so joyful. It could be really difficult. And so I definitely think that just plays into it. I think the second part is this is a time to gather for family. I think at this time of year is when families get together, whether it's the kids that are away at college trying to get home, that this is a time when we gather, and this year there'll be an empty chair. And I think that in and of itself makes it really difficult. And I think the last thing is that this holiday season is so pregnant with beautiful memories of us with our loved ones. Yeah. And so it's hard to enter into it and not recall all of the good times that have happened in the past and how difficult it's going to be this year.
Yeah, that's those are just laid out so beautifully. I really appreciate that. That's that stuff with the memories and things, so many of those are connected all the way back to our childhood and stuff, and just kind of work their way, they're just connected with a bridge, one after the other. And I think the weight of that when one of our persons dies, whoever it is, that connection just gets broken, and people, we feel that disconnectedness. That, since you said, I heard you say one day, talking about, again, going offline, that things just sort of not being there in the way that we expect. It's just really creates an awful lot of sadness and sorrow and difficulty. Yeah.
I think the additional part there too is it feels like everyone else is enjoying the season. So again, just not the feeling that this is a hard season for us, but looking around and seeing people celebrating in any time of the year, I think can be really difficult. So I want to acknowledge that too, as just one of those things when there's so much expectation of what this season is supposed to be, that just becomes one more when you feel all alone in the suffering and in the grief.
Right. Yeah. I think there's two things there that popped into my head. One of them is our own anxiety about that, and everybody else is having fun, or everybody else is enjoying this. And it really, makes that loneliness and that isolation that we have even greater.
Yeah.
But I think also that people have a fear about well, bringing other people down, that they don't want to mess with somebody else's holiday. So let me ask this, so with both of those parts to that, how would you suggest that people on their, with their own sense of anxiety and nervousness, how would you suggest that they confront that? Is there some way that they can feel okay about that?
Yeah, I think I love the word that you just said, confront, around anxiety, in the nervousness that comes with this holiday season. I think, the goal is to acknowledge, and anticipate. The only way, through these heavy emotions and grief, is to go through it. And yeah, the only way to get out is to go through, right? When we're talking about this difficult thing. And so anticipating that it's going to be a difficult season, is a really big part of it. Knowing that there's going to be triggers, expect that. I think the other thing is just giving yourself and each other permission. Permission to change plans, permission to maintain plans. I know one of the things we kind of tell people, hey, look, if you're feeling apprehension or nervousness around going to, a holiday event, drive your own car. And so that way, that when it's up for you, you don't have to suffer through an experience, but you can move out, whether it's the sense of, I feel like I'm bringing people down, or this is really difficult for me. I think our heart for all of the people who are listening is that they would show compassion to themselves, and that they would be kind to themselves, and just acknowledging that it's going to be difficult. The other thing I just want to say is, because there is so much pressure in and around the holidays and tradition, and family events, and we say this a lot, don't should on each other and don't should on yourself. Because I think there's we feel like, well, here's the thing I should do. I really should go to this event. We really should do this thing that we've always done, when deep down inside, that's really going to be difficult to do this year.
Yeah.
So give yourself some permission to maybe, let's do something a little bit different this year, right? Maybe instead of this one thing that's going to be difficult for everyone, maybe not do that, and give yourself permission to maybe do something else. And I just think the key, as we don't just suffer in silos, but we do this in our family systems, is communication. Being able to speak out loud of like, hey, I think this is going to be really difficult to do this piece and this piece. How do you feel about that? And it's better to acknowledge it and name it and process it together than just like internalize that and feel the anxiety of it. Because if it's not expressed, it's repressed. And if we're repressing it, then it's going to eat away at us, and it's going to make us irritable and more depressed. And it just becomes really big.
Yeah. And I was thinking when you said you don't should on yourself. Well, the other part is true as well. Don't shouldn't on yourself.
Yeah,
good. Because I know I know you may get caught off guard with a good feeling. To put it that way, you're coming into the holiday, and I don't know, maybe you see a commercial or something like that, or you hear a song or whatever, and instead of going, and feeling the pain of that, you actually, are feeling the joy or the anticipation or the excitement or whatever that may be coming up. And we oftentimes can find ourselves going, oh no, I shouldn't do that because I'm grieving. And so that permission, I think, goes both ways.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I think, New Hope Grief Support, we do adult grief support groups. We do them for kids. They're an 8-week group. We've started 2 unique groups. One is suicide loss. The other one is child loss group, specifically for those people, in their nature. The best person to support someone in that situation is someone in that situation.
Sure. Yeah.
But one of the things, I learned from our suicide grief support group, as we've been running that for a few years, is that it's like we say this, it's like a good funeral. It's got lots of tears and lots of laughter. Yep. And I think that the suicide grief community probably laughs more than anyone else.
Wow.
In our groups. And I think it comes from that thing that you just said, where it feels like, with our grief, and it's so ubiquitous that it feels like that pain is the last part of our
Yep.
connection to that person who is
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm.
And there's just this fear, if I let that go,
Right. They clutch
then
onto it.
I lose them altogether.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's where that pressure comes from of like, well, I can't be happy, right? Because it feels like a betrayal.
Right.
And if someone else who's going through what I'm going through can move to laughter, that can move to joy, who can start to pick up pieces and start to live again, if they can do that, and as we say this a lot in our groups, they represent embodied hope. That maybe for me, I can do that too.
Yeah.
And it's often that we need to give ourselves permission. We need permission from each other. But in these groups where we can recognize that other people need to give us that permission too sometimes,
Right.
and
Right.
set us free and not feel guilty or worried about how other people are feeling. And I just always believe this too. I think our people who have died and that are no longer here physically, love us and they understand that we're going to grieve.
Mhm.
But I truly believe they long for us to live too.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take a long time.
Sure.
I think our hope always is over time, there'll be more smiles than tears,
Yeah.
but you got to give yourself permission for that too. And I
Yeah.
just think you bringing that up is key.
Yeah. Yeah, that permission is really important. And I think to circle back for a moment about, not worrying about other people and the laughter and stuff. It sparked a memory in my head. A colleague told me a story that she knew of a woman at the holiday season who decided to go to a party that she'd been invited to, wasn't sure what was going to happen. So she took an entire roll of toilet paper along with her to, blow her nose and wipe her. And she walked in the door and she said she just, my friend reported that she just decided that she was just going to let everybody know about it. I'm grieving and I don't know what's going to happen, but I have come prepared and pulled out this roll of toilet paper, and people, it just kind of broke the ice.
I
And
love it.
and that whole sense of trepidation that everybody has. Well, what do I say? And gee, I don't know that I want to talk with that person because I might say something or do something and they are feeling the same way. And so there's
Yeah.
this barrier that might actually, if broken down with something where permission is given by the bereaved person
Yeah.
and then received by those around, that maybe there is that sense of hope that you talked about and everything. And admittedly, this was probably a very one of a kind of woman and stuff to do that. It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to go out and to be that vulnerable in that place. But I also think what a gift that she gave to everybody in that party about learning about grief in a broader perspective.
Yeah. I love that. And man, tons of respect for her to open that door
Wow.
so
Yeah.
wide. But the only thing I could think worse than that vulnerability would be to show up and no one says anything.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Where it just feels like everyone knows
Mhm.
I'm suffering. And what happens when we don't know how to approach and support, we typically back off. And
Yep.
what we need people to lean in and to name it, right? And the second part, which I want to just add to what I love, that first coming in and acknowledging, I love the tissue thing because it just becomes like an icebreaker, right?
Yeah.
It just is like, this is my reality.
Mhm.
And I think the reason I love grief is because there's no pretenses, there's no false
Yep.
face. There's just the sense of, hey, this is me. And so
Yep.
that's really good. And I think the thing I would add, and we say this all the time in our groups, is say their name, right?
Yes.
Mention their name. Because I think if there's anything that we're going to let go of, like we got to let go of the pain over time, right? Slowly and gradually. The other thing we really want to hold on to is their name.
Mhm.
And so, always, my sister, I had a long-term illness and died a few months ago. My sister, Cindy, right? And I honestly, when I say it, I feel like I refresh her presence in my life.
Yes.
That there's this sense I've brought her, now I've brought her into this conversation.
Yeah. Right.
But I brought her into the present. I brought her into the space, right? Just as that
Mhm.
woman came in and really brought her person into that space. I think it's so important. And when we think about how we move forward with them, right? We
Yep.
don't get over our person. We redefine the relationship and we move forward with them. And I
Yeah.
just think that's such an important thing for us to continue to do as well.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really, really powerful, the saying of their names and all, which is, another image that you had earlier that I think is really, really powerful is that empty chair. So you've got the empty chair at Thanksgiving or the holiday party, or the silence where that person's voice normally would be, and everybody recognizes it. So it is this 2-ton elephant that's in the room that everybody recognizes is there, and nobody wants to admit to or possibly scratch, because
Yeah.
the again, that anxiety is there. And so I think, as you said, bringing those things to the forefront, bringing them out, saying their name, having an empty chair at a Thanksgiving.
Love it.
Those are some practical kinds of things. Are there other stuff that you've heard of, that people have talked about, that they've done, or that that, or maybe, condolences with, your sister's death, but maybe
Thank you.
your family will discuss this holiday season?
Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up and acknowledging Cindy's death too. I feel like, oh man, we got to start having those conversations.
Yeah.
We just started talking, who's coming, what are we going to do? But it's an important discussion to have in advance.
Yeah.
It relieves a lot of the pressure and the tensions of not knowing.
Mhm.
But there are beautiful ways to honor. And I've learned so much from this beautiful bereaved community that I have the honor of working with. And I remember, one family that spoke at our holiday service. The father had died. He was a big Eagles fan. They look like they're going to do well this year.
Yeah.
And he just had tons of jerseys. So for Thanksgiving, everyone put on one of the jerseys and showed up, and he was there present. And it was just this beautiful tribute that says, yeah, in the spirit of him, we're still here. We're rooting for him, with him. It was just a beautiful gesture that I thought, man, that is great.
Yeah.
I got another friend, his mom died, and she died before his son was born. And so it was really important that he continues to speak his mom's name. And then what he did for his son is he took his mom's dish and set it out at Christmas time, puts candy in it, and then he'll say, why don't you go grab a piece of candy from grandma's dish? And it was just a way to include him in the relationship as well. So finding sacred objects that take up space in your home are really important. At this time of year too, we're getting ready for a family camp at the end of the month, and we do an ofrenda, which is it's the Day of the Dead. It's an offering space where you put up a picture, sometimes put some of their favorite things out, light a candle, and it is just this concept that we're bringing them into our space with us. And I think those types of things are really powerful and normalize this experience of like we're moving forward with them, right? To a certain degree. I mean, not physically, but relationally, we bring them with us, and our grief is out in the open, and we open up conversations. And then the last thing is, sharing memories. Not just focusing in on the sadness of the death, but the beauty of the life. And even maybe commitments of, hey, what are ways we can honor Dad this year? What are things he would want for us? And to talk about those things around the table. And I just believe the more we normalize this way of interacting with each other, the better off we'll be in our grief journeys.
Yeah, absolutely. And to there's so much already with holidays that lends itself to do the things that we need to do to grieve. The rituals and the traditions that we have, those rituals in particular, they move our bodies through space. They make us, kind of act out stuff that we've done for years. And those elements are already in these holidays. I think I think maybe that's part of the reason as well that makes them so anxiety producing and why we want to pull away, because all of that stuff is already there. But within the midst of that, if we can embrace that and use those same traditions and those same rituals with just a little tweak on it,
Yeah.
that people talk about,
Yeah.
now they become, there's going to be pain involved, especially in that first year, and
Yeah.
oftentimes even in the second one, because people
Yeah.
think, well, I'm done with it, and then wham, it really nails them. But within the pain also, there is the processing of that pain, and moving people into a sense of hope and something new and beautiful
Yeah.
in a new way. And you find new traditions too. That's the other thing. I think that's the other thing that helps people with that.
Yeah.
You mentioned the candy dish and grandma and his son stuff. How do we include kids in these things? Because
Yeah.
that's a part of what I think, again, what makes the holidays so difficult is all of those childhood memories get wrapped up, and we don't want to destroy things for children and stuff. So what do you say about that?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I know we're both in the space here of child advocacy, especially around child bereavement, and they usually are the silent grievers in our midst, because there's this dual thing that happens in our experience where, mom doesn't want to be sad in front of the child, because then they're going to make the child sad. And the child doesn't want to be sad in front of mom, because she's going to make mom sad. So what we do is we suffer in isolation, right? Even within our own homes. And so our kids have experienced a loss. So as much as we may be tempted to shield them from that by not talking about it, or maybe not including them in the funeral services, which I would encourage, if they're open to being there, let them be there, because they need those rituals. And like you said, they've been in our families, and our communities, and our cultures for generation after generation after generation. To some degree, they're hardwired in the way that we grieve, the way that we memorialize and tribute, and to do those ceremonies are really important. And we learned that through the pandemic when they were taken away.
Yep.
And we saw how much people struggled because they couldn't do what they normally do.
Yeah.
Well, our kids really need to see that too. They need to be involved.
Yeah.
They need to give voice to their grief. They need space to talk about it. They, even their big feelings that may feel misplaced, instead of saying to a child, don't feel bad, or don't feel sad, or don't feel guilty.
Yeah.
We want to encourage feeling.
Yep.
And some of the things we can say to them is, of course you would feel that way. I mean, with all that you've been through, I can see how that would feel. And maybe let's just look at it some other ways too. I mean, is it possible? So you're validating that emotion, you're acknowledging it, you're not telling them what to feel, right? We don't want that. Right. But then, processing with them a little bit. And last but not least, I mean, kids, they watch us and they learn how to grieve from us. And so if we are trying to suppress emotions and not deal with it, or not cry in front of them, they're going to do the same. And again, if it's not expressed, it's repressed. But if it is mentionable, it's manageable. That's an Al-Anon quote. And if we can talk about it and let it breathe, right? It turns out to be safer. And then all of a sudden now we can have some healing coming through that as well. And some really good connection between children and adults.
Yeah. Yeah. Boy, that's beautiful. That is just amazing. And I just can't emphasize enough what you've said about including children. They need to be a part of that discussion as you come into the holidays. It's like, well, what are we going to do this year? How are we going to do this? We always gathered at grandma's house and things, and she made the turkey for Thanksgiving. Well, she's died, What are we going to do? What becomes most important for us then of the things that are left? And children need to be asked those questions too, because we help them to grow and mature, which is one of the biggest things that grief does for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So while we're here in October, and we've got that, that downhill, swoosh from, for all the holidays between here and, the end of December.
Yeah.
But that's not the only place that holidays are at, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, things that we commemorate,
Yeah.
birthdays, anniversaries, Valentine's Day, the special family gatherings that we have, that we all get together at the lake or go to the mountains or the beach or whatever it is on a particular time of year and stuff. Those are holidays too.
Yeah.
Can these strategies, Chris, be used in the same way over there too?
Yeah, they can. They need to be. You need to integrate those into these things. And I think, you mentioned earlier, sometimes year two can be harder. We had someone on our panel at our holiday service last year who said year two is way harder. So I
Yeah.
wasn't expecting how hard it was going to be. I just
Yeah.
was trying to get through that first year, because everyone tells me, all of these firsts will be so hard, but it was every year. It's been
Yeah.
every year since, right? And so
Right.
again, acknowledging and anticipating is really important, knowing that these are going to be difficult times. And I think, one of the things you can do is, set reminders in your phone in order
Yeah.
to prepare yourself for yourself, but also to support other people too. To send that text, to your mom, when it gets close to their anniversary, right? Say,
Sure.
I'm thinking of you. I know this is going to be a tough week for you.
Yeah.
I'm here. Just naming it and acknowledging it is really important in all of those types of holidays. All of these, events, having a child, getting married, graduations, all of these things, there are these moments where it can almost feel like you're back in day one again.
Yeah.
And that over time you think, oh, it's just going to get easier, but grief doesn't work that way. It's not linear. It doesn't go in stages. It comes in waves, and it can knock you over when you least expect it.
Yep.
So anticipate that it will be difficult. Make plans, do things. I love the idea of letters or journaling, letters to,
Right.
letters from. It can be so healing. So taking time to do things like that, and just by all means, please be kind and compassionate to yourself and to each other during those times.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Just as we begin to wrap up here and everything, I know that New Hope will have a holiday, memorial service and things. And I know hospitals do, and many hospices. We at Forest Lawn have one as well, that, these are all available to the community. And I think it's really important, particularly at this time of year, to give yourself that kind of space if you're grieving that. Oftentimes those things are also available for children, that kids can come. I know they can in ours. I'm sure, Chris, at New Hope, that you guys include children in that as well. And that simple things that you don't have to be explained really go a long way for us to heal ourselves. Had a woman, in the first years I was here and was doing a candlelight service, she came to me and she said, I've been coming to these things for years. She said, I think it was about that time, it was like 4 or 5 years since her husband died. She said, I come here, I decorate his grave, I light a candle for him, and now I'm ready for the holiday season.
Yeah.
She was well beyond that, 4 or 5 years, time's weird, but she was in a place where life was, occurring again. And her loss was a part of who she was, but it wasn't the whole of who she was.
Yeah.
And here she was still coming back to honor that. And those are things that we need to keep in mind as well, is that, as you said, it's not linear, it's not done, there's no closure, we don't get finished. We always have to be aware of its place in our life, because we never stop loving those people who have died, and we can't.
Yeah. I love that that whole bit of creating a space where you are taking time to honor your person and honor your grief, right?
Yeah.
So that candle lighting thing. And I think these holiday services we do, that you do at Forest Lawn, and there are these spaces where you can show up, you can be with other people who are also going through it.
Yep.
Your presence, again, as embodied hope, there's to you to offer and receive support. But it's also this place of like, no, I know this is going to be a crazy season, but this is my moment to really pause and honor those both, right?
Yep.
my grief in my person.
Yep.
And then, yeah, I think it can give you the legs to kind of move through the rest of the holiday season. So
Yeah.
wherever you're at, I want to encourage your listeners, find a space, find a place where you can get together with people
Yep.
and be part of that healing process. We call it a sacred space.
Yep.
To see other people who are experiencing what you're experiencing and offer and receive support from one another.
Yeah. And they all bring their own names, just like you did earlier, and they bring those names, and those people are together, and it is a rich and full, wonderful experience and things. Oh, well, Chris, I can't thank you enough. This has been just, this has flown by, and it's been marvelous, and just my gratitude in this, beginning of this season of gratitude here is very, very deep. Thank you for bringing and being a light, and being such a wealth of knowledge, and bringing that sense of peace in the midst of all of this, because that oftentimes is missing for folks.
Thank you, Galen. It's been a pleasure, and be kind to yourself and to each other this holiday season.
Yeah. So thank you all for joining us, whether you're here live or whether it is sometime in the future. I hope that you found something in here that will give you that sense of hope, that we've been able to mediate that to you, and make you feel a little bit stronger, so that you can wrestle with your grief just for today. It's all anybody can ask for you, and sometimes even just for now. My great thanks go out to Jessica for monitoring the feed, and for doing so much work with our page. And I invite each and every one of you to follow us on Facebook, so that we can be together in our journey of grief. And now, Chris and I both send you peace as you grieve your loss.